So, in order to cover the Columbus Blue Jackets, I took another shirt, another look around for the shirt, the Blue Jackets jersey I have. The jersey that I have of the Blue Jackets was given to me by a guy I used to work with at a call center, and it was from their first season, so it had the wasp on it, or whatever that Blue Jacket was. Of course, now the Blue Jackets are acknowledged as, the soldiers, not a bee hornet wasp thing with a green beak. But I tell you, that was an interesting jersey, not a pretty one. So there's potential that either A, it's at my mother's, or B, it's just gone. It killed itself because it's too ugly. But if I'm going to talk about Columbus, this was the last expansion. This was the last time that the NHL expanded. And thankfully, I have books that go back to that year. See that? That's Felix Potvin with the Vancouver Canucks. That was a good time. Oh, Canucks fans, remember that? Remember that? Just shoot over his glove. Just there, they did it, and it went in the net. It's good. Thanks, Felix. It's good goaltender. But we've gone far enough away from Felix Potvin being a goaltender that people actually think that Felix Potvin was like a top echelon goal. He was a good, okay, but that's not Columbus, so I'll just shut up. All right. The Blue Jackets, a fine fit in pro-starved town, and the city of Columbus still doesn't have any other professional team. For the record, this jersey I'm wearing, this is Minnesota North Stars. It's Minnesota North Stars because it doesn't have Dallas written over top. If you see a Stars jersey and there's no Dallas over top, and you see it being sold on eBay, oh, Dallas Stars jersey. The person selling it's an idiot. They don't realize it's Minnesota North Stars. This is a Minnesota North Stars jersey. I technically have 3 Minnesota North Stars jerseys. I have this one in black, I have this one in white, and then I have the original North Stars logo on the other jersey I have. These jerseys, doesn't matter. I'll get into that with the Dallas video, which we'll be doing later this week, which will get into the whole Minnesota-Dallas thing, and I'll get into my fandom. But for now, let's talk about Columbus. Much like the custom-built arena on the northern edge of downtown Columbus, the expansion Blue Jackets have been assembled from the ground up, under the watchful and tireless eyes of Doug MacLean. And yes, it's the same Doug MacLean as on Hockey Central. MacLean, Columbus's president GM, has dealt with expansion franchises before. Remember how quickly he coached the Florida Panthers into respectability? But never before has he had this much to oversee. A roster built largely through the expansion draft after a year of exhaustive pro and amateur scouting was bolstered by the summer free agent signings of free agent defenseman Lyle Odeline and goaltender Ron Tugnut. That's right, another team down at the bottom of the league said, hey, we need a goaltender who's okay with losing. Let's go get Ron Tugnut. MacLean didn't settle on a coach until almost 2 weeks after the expansion draft, when he hired former Calgary coach Dave King, who didn't last very long. It has been the most incredible ride of my professional life, MacLean said, but it's been absolutely exhausting at times. When the Blue Jackets begin their inaugural season October 7th in Nationwide Arena against the Chicago Blackhawks, the city of Columbus will be stoked as never before. The city's first ever pro team will play its first official game before a sellout crowd. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? Expectations. The goal, MacLean says, is to be competitive every night. That's why Columbus has emphasized defense and goaltending. If the Blue Jackets get their wish, there will be plenty of low-scoring games and few blowouts. They may not win a lot, but they figure to be in the hunt and keep the crowd involved. MacLean said during draft weekend that anything above 60 points should be considered a success. Is that being considered? Let's take a look at Columbus's expansion season, shall we? I know they did better than Minnesota that first year. The first year, they had 71 points. Because they went more veteran-heavy than Minnesota. And the defense as well. They only allowed 233 goals, which for an expansion team is pretty damn good. It's pretty good. Goaltending. Columbus feels very good with its man between the pipes. Blue Jackets signed Tugnut to a 4-year, $10 million contract, and his duties will be twofold. First, he'll see plenty of playing time the first couple of seasons, but he'll also be responsible for bringing along Mark Denis, a 23-year-old whom the Blue Jackets acquired from Colorado. Denis, described by McLean as the future cornerstone of the franchise. Will be developed at a comfortable pace. How King will split time between Tugnut, and Denis in his first season remains to be seen. Future cornerstone of the franchise. I didn't read this through before I made this video. Oh, Doug McLean. Oh, God. Now you know why Kiprios tells him to shut up. Defense. Lyle Odeline signed to a 3-year, $7.2 million contract. It's the anchor, a guy who won't take much guff. Frank Kuchera is solid and reliable, and Blue Jackets hope Matthias Timander and Jamie Pushor can be consistent and steady. Jamie Pushor, who was born on the same day as me. Columbus leaves the potential of tough guy Jean-Luc Grand-Pierre, acquired in the expansion draft with Buffalo. Or loves the potential. Grand-Pierre never made it. Not really. Offense. The forward lines are made up of cast-offs, misfits, players with great pasts and iffy futures, and players with no track records at all. Columbus took a flyer on some speedy Europeans. Espen Knutson, who was a good call for an expansion team. Jan Kalun, not so much. Martin Spaniel, not so much. And David Viborny, who was a revelation in Columbus in his early seasons. Their ability to skate amidst the NHL giants will go a long way to determining the Blue Jackets' fate. Olawa and Odeline were signed to keep opponents from pounding these guys into submission. And Odeline didn't last very long in Columbus. Lyle Odeline was a very useful defenseman, though, and he was more than just a pair of fists. Unsung hero. Odeline's willingness to sign with Columbus may prove to be tremendously important to the organization. Not only is he a solid NHL veteran and a guy the Blue Jackets can bank on, but by coming to Columbus, he greased the skids for others. Tugnut admitted as much, and brought a level of respectability to the franchise. And then you look at who they took in the expansion draft, or who they ended up with that first season. Their depth chart in net, they had Tugnut and Denis, which was fantastic. On the blue line, they had Kuchera, Odeline, or Radim Bachanik, who I think was also... Yeah, he was expansion draft. He played in the AHL the year before. He wasn't bad. Again, this is expansion. Grand-Pierre, Jamie Heward, Rusty Klesla, who was a top draft pick, Jamie Pushor, Duron Quint, Burt Robertson. I was a fan of Burt Robertson in Vancouver just because every time he touched the puck, I'd go, "Hey, Burt. Hey, Burt." It's just minor, stupid stuff like that. And Matthias Timander, who was a Boston defenseman, I wasn't upset when he left. Forwards, this is where it gets ugly. Stephen Hines, Robert Cron. Cron had a very good run with the expansion team in Columbus, and he had a good run in Carolina at the start too. Robert Cron was underutilized by Vancouver, I feel, in his time there. Jeff Sanderson, who sucks. David Viborny, who was much better than anybody expected his first couple of seasons in the NHL. Kevin Adams, Serge Aubin, Jan Kalun, Kevin Dineen finished his career up there. Drury, that's Ted Drury, right? Yeah, Ted Drury. Gardner, Bruce Gardner, Espen Knutson, Chris Nielsen, who was... Yeah, he was a decent player, too, for them the first season. Olawa, Spaniel, and then Wright. Tyler Wright, who had a decent run in Columbus. So that's the expansion year. Now, I decided to go ahead a couple years and go to 2003, 2004. See, there's Bertuzzi just before he punches Steve Moore. That's the look that was always on Bertuzzi's face. He always looked like he was ready to punch somebody. Terrifying. Okay. Well, this is set 3 years after that. While expansion cousin Minnesota has already tasted playoff success, the Columbus Blue Jackets continue to look for the missing pieces via free agency in 2001. The Jackets, or no, continue to look for the missing pieces via free agency, period. In 2001, the Jackets added two-way center Mike Sillinger to the mix. He played for every team. Then went back to the market in the summer of 2002 for veteran defender Luke Richardson and Scott LaChance. This time around, GM coach Doug MacLean turned his attention towards second-line center Tard Marchand and backup netminder Freddie Brathwaite. He also lost Ray Whitney to unrestricted free agency and re-signed top-line pivot Andrew Castles, who was one of my favorite players when he played, and I was very upset Vancouver didn't keep him. The result is a team that is more experienced than ever, but can it win consistently? Instead of naming a permanent replacement at coach, McLean decided to continue on as head coach for an indefinite period. We'll see how the players, many signed to multi-year deals by McLean, respond. Let's see, that was 02-03. 03-04, they got worse. They dropped from 69 points to 62. So, yeah, it didn't work out well for McLean, who will admit now he bit off more than he could chew by being coach, GM, president, all-knowing sage, Zod. You didn't know he was Zod at that point, did you? Can Brathwaite provide relief for Denis? Last year, the Jackets' number one netminder saw a ton of rubber. If Denis isn't shell-shocked by the experience, he should benefit greatly from having Brathwaite backing him up. It's not quite how things turned out. It's more rosy in here than it actually turned out. 2002 first overall pick Rick Nash was arguably the most impressive NHL rookie last year, so there's hope that Nash can be the franchise forward the club desperately needs. You could argue he was, you could argue he wasn't, and you could probably come up with a decent argument for both sides of that. Is the defense core good enough? No. Beyond the impressive youngster Rusty Klesla, they spell his full name out, but he became Rusty later on. The rest of the incumbents are either too old, Richardson and LaChance, too inconsistent, Spacek, or not good enough to play regularly, Derek Walzer, Duvie Westcott, and Jean-Luc Grandpierre. What will losing Whitney do for the Columbus offense? They had Ray Whitney and lost him. Ray Whitney did quite a tour through the teams in his career as well. Replacing Whitney with Marchand isn't a fair swap in terms of offensive production. While the latter may be more versatile and a better fit within the system, and he wasn't, Whitney's loss will especially hurt the power play, and it did. Coaching. Prior to replacing Dave King last season, McLean hadn't been behind an NHL bench since 97-98, but he was the guy that led Florida to an impromptu Stanley Cup final in 95-96. He preaches defense and tenacity and doesn't have a lot of patience for mistakes. As one of only 3 GM coach types in the NHL, along with Glenn Sather and Daryl Sutter, and those guys are not both those things now, McLean must adjust his coaching style to accommodate the fact he's now the man both writing the checks and making the lineup decisions, which is almost never a good situation. Outlook. While Nash is a cornerstone player, the Jackets appear content with building the core through veterans via the free agent market. Unfortunately, they haven't picked up any blue-chip names and settled instead for second-tier players. In the competitive Western Conference, that's not good enough. Year 4 of the franchise will again bring disappointment, and they were right. So when certain hockey fans say, the media is just after my team and they all predict doom and gloom, well, they're usually right. It's the truth. Yeah, and they show Castles at 68 points in 79 games his first season in Columbus. So after Vancouver dropped him. He only played 53 games the season Vancouver dropped him, but he had 50 points. So they were like, oh, well, he's injured all the time. Yeah, but he scores a point a game when he's in there. It's pretty good to have, isn't he? David Roberti, his first 3 seasons, he had 32 points in 79 games, 31 points in 75 games, and then 46 points in 79 games. Again, for an expansion team, those are good totals. Jeff Sanderson, 56 points in 68 games his first year, then 16 points in 42 games his second year, 67 points in 82 games his third year. Just pumping him up so he can disappoint other fans in other cities. Sanderson's totals were better because, expansion team and there wasn't any real depth. Once Columbus decided to get better, Jeff Sanderson was kind of cast aside. Rick Nash had 39 points in 74 games in his rookie season. Very few 18-year-olds have been able to produce as well as Nash did last season. The franchise left winger has size, speed, and hands, along with a nose for the net that simply cannot be taught. You can't teach a nose, no. In order to take the next step, Nash will need to add more upper body strength to better compete with rugged NHL blue liners. Looking ahead, Nash has a very bright future in the NHL as a premier power forward. While he may never dominate a game physically like Todd Bertuzzi, Nash will rack up plenty of goals in the big league. Expect 50-plus points this season. And I believe that was the year that he had the Cy Young, where he scored all the goals and didn't get any assists, because he had nobody to pass to. So it made sense. And yeah, there's Sillinger, who spent 2 years in Columbus, which for him is like retirement. And Todd Marchant, I remember the year that he signed. That was his career year. He had 60 points in 77 games. Edmonton let him walk because he wanted too much money. And Edmonton was right. And you won't hear Edmonton was right very often. So what does this say for Columbus? I've looked at their early career. And they've only made the playoffs twice in 17 seasons. So is there hope in Columbus? Yeah, but it's not a lot. Both years that they've made the playoffs, they've got eliminated in the first round. They got swept once by Detroit, and then they lost in 6 to Pittsburgh in 2014. And when they lost to Pittsburgh, I was so upset because I really wanted them to knock Pittsburgh out. I thought, man, I want Columbus to do well, and it is disheartening to see how things have gone for them, because I personally like the team. The problem is this coach of theirs, this John Tortorella. As long as the team's 500, he's going to keep his job. And the game's kind of passed Tortorella by. I don't know that Columbus can realistically look at themselves and say, all right, we're going to be a playoff team now. I mean, last year, their number one scorer was Brendan Saad with 53 points. Atkinson's was tied with him for 53 points, but Brendan Saad had 31 goals, so he finishes at the top of the scoring list. Boone Jenner had 30 goals, but only 49 points. So again, that tells me with guys not getting assists, there's probably a lot of solo plays that get goals. There's not a lot of, either they're not completing enough passes to get these totals, so that's why nobody's getting assists, or there's no confidence in line mates. So the fact that one of them was a left winger, one of them was a right winger, one of them was a center, and they all had more goals than assists last year, that's not good. And you know, hopefully Columbus can get it together. I know that Bobrovsky, I took some flack during the summer for saying I think Bobrovsky is one of the top goalies in the league. I still believe that. I think if Bobrovsky can keep up the good start that he's put up this season, and it's November 4th right now of 2016 when I'm recording this, I really think they could be a dark horse to make the playoffs. And it's been rough watching them the last couple of years. Like last year, they had 76 points. The year before that, they had 89. After that 89-point season, they had a really good run at the end of that season. They were just killer for the last 20 games of that season. And there was some feeling that while they weren't going to be that good last year, they'd at least be better than what they were. So, yeah, it's tough to predict where Columbus goes from here. I know they don't have a great record. 485 wins, 565 losses, 113 overtime losses. So they're well below 500. And, you know, there's a reason for that. But there are reasons to have some optimism when it comes to being a Columbus fan. Seth Jones is a really, really solid defenseman. Brendan Saad is a guy that you can build around. Atkinson has impressed me from what I've seen of him this year. A lot of energy. Boone Jenner's struggling. Dubinsky's a rat, but he's a talented rat. And I think he'll always put up a decent amount of points while being rat-like. He doesn't look as much like a rat as Donald or David Boland, but he's close. He's close. Um, and then from there, it's just a matter of being able to fill out the rest of the roster. I mean, Bjorkstrand's got potential. William Karlsson, I don't know if he's ever going to reach where he was supposed to be. Ryan Murray should be, the workhorse on the blue line if he can stay healthy. There's a lot of things in Columbus that should work well for them. I'm not going to get into their career leaders. They just haven't been around that long. And their career leaders is going to be kind of a sad list in general. They haven't made the playoffs. But most games, Rick Nash with 674. Most points, Rick Nash with 547. Most penalty minutes career, Jared Boll with 1,195. Most shutouts, 19 for Steve Mason. Longest consecutive game streak, RJ Umberger at 288. Most goals in the season, 41 by Rick Nash in 03-04. Most assists, Ray Whitney in 02-03 with 52. Most points in the season, 79 for Rick Nash. So 79 points was as high up as he got. And Nash really, he's a Ranger now, and he's always being mentioned in trade talks, but Nash never really became that dominant forward. He's a very good goal scorer, but yeah, that year he had 41 goals. Yeah, he had the Cy Young that year. He had 41 goals that year and 16 assists. You have to be a special kind of selfish, or your line mates have to be a special kind of horrible to only have 16 assists when you have 41 goals. And yeah, I remember that. I remember joking at work that he just didn't have anybody to pass to. He'd look at his line mates and go, "Well, you guys suck. I'm just going to do this myself." Or his line mates saying, "We are terrible. Here, take it." But yeah, so Columbus is an interesting dilemma. But Columbus does have one of the nicest third jerseys in the NHL. It is an absolute work of art. And eventually it'll be in my collection. It's just not there yet. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're a Columbus fan, thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe because I do tend to talk about all 30 teams. I will skew towards certain teams because of local coverage, Canadian coverage, and general interest levels, but I try to make sure I hit all 30 teams. So for Columbus fans, hopefully this is the year. Hopefully they make the playoffs, because the NHL needs 30 strong teams, and Columbus has been lagging behind in terms of almost every result. Attendance, I'll take a quick look here. I don't think attendance has been a problem for them. I could be wrong though. No, that's not it. Attendance. Oh, don't give me no. It might actually be in here. I mean, you guys have all that information in here and you don't have attendance? Alright, fine. Fine. Oh, there we go. I found a historical graph on hockeydb.com. So when you need to look for stats, hockeydb.com is one of the best ones for it. So, yeah, their attendance peaked in 2001-2002 with 18,136 per game. It has fluctuated, but they're still in the 15,155 for this year. So they're up from last year where they had 14,666 average. So there's potential there. If Columbus ever wins, there's a fan base that's ready for it and wants to see some hockey. The low point appears to be 2010-11 when they had 13,658 per game, which sounds low until you look at teams like Jersey, the New York Islanders, Florida, at certain points Tampa, and you find out how much Tampa was giving tickets away. Good, good numbers, not great, but anyways, hopefully things turn around for Columbus. And thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon with more content.